We often think of negotiations as this perfectly rational dance, a simple back-and-forth exchange of logic and numbers. But what actually happens when the other side just tosses the rulebook out the window and all that logic is replaced by manipulation? Today, we are decoding the high-stakes countermeasures you absolutely need to defend yourself against dirty tricks in tough negotiations. By the end of this explainer, you're going to be completely empowered and ready to hold your ground.
So how do you react when someone unleashes psychological warfare on you in a negotiation? It's kind of an uncomfortable thought, isn't it? I mean, maybe you've been in a situation where you suddenly just felt off balance, heavily pressured, or confused, but you couldn't quite put your finger on exactly why. It feels personal, it feels immediate. Well, that unsettling feeling usually isn't an accident, it's a highly calculated move. Validating that experience is your very first step in overcoming it. You aren't imagining things, you are being targeted by deliberate manipulative tactics designed to make you cave in.
Okay, let's dive right into this, because understanding this concept is absolutely foundational to everything we're looking at today. Some bargainers out there, they simply don't rely on the strength of their argument or the actual fairness of their position. Instead, they rely entirely on unfair tactics, literally employing psychological warfare just to throw you off balance. They want to completely bypass your logical brain and launch an attack on your comfort, your confidence, and your sense of security. When we name it for what it is, psychological warfare, it totally changes how we view the interaction. It's no longer just a misunderstanding. It's a strategy actively being deployed against you.
Consider environmental manipulation for a second, like intentionally making a meeting room freezing cold. Sounds petty, right? But really think about that physical discomfort. When you're sitting there shivering and distracted, you suddenly just want to sign the deal so you can escape and go get a sweater. It's a literal physical attack on your endurance. Then you've got interpersonal manipulation, like the classic good cop, bad cop routine. This one is pure emotional whiplash. One partner screams at you and the other swoops in to rescue you, basically hoping your sheer relief will translate into massive concessions. One attacks your body's comfort, the other attacks your emotional equilibrium. Both are incredibly toxic to a fair negotiation.
But here is the real problem, and honestly, it's something we all struggle with. When we are faced with these tactics, our natural, polite human instinct is to simply suffer through it. We sit in that freezing room and politely pretend we aren't cold. We endure the aggressive bad cop and try our best to appease them. We ignore the trick because calling it out feels rude or confrontational. But leaning into that polite instinct is exactly what the manipulator is banking on. They are counting on your silence. Your silence is literally the fuel that allows their psychological warfare to be effective.
And this brilliantly illustrates the exact pivot we need to make with a core directive. If you see a dirty trick, don't ignore it. It is a clear, unambiguous rule. We absolutely have to override our polite social conditioning. Ignoring the trick doesn't make it magically go away. It essentially gives the manipulator a free pass to keep using it. And frankly, it hands them the upper hand on a silver platter. So if we can't ignore it, what exactly are we supposed to do?
Well, here's your solution. The three-step defense. It's this sequential, highly logical process that drains all the messy emotion out of the conflict and puts you firmly back in the driver's seat. First, detect the trick. Second, label the behavior. And third, re-anchor to standards. We're going to unpack these 3 steps right now to build your ultimate defense strategy.
Let's start right at the beginning. Step 1, detect the trick. Conscious awareness is the absolute critical first step to disarming any form of psychological warfare. I mean, you can't fight an enemy you don't even see, right? This step requires you to be an active, hyper-observant participant in the negotiation, not just a passive listener taking notes. You've got to step back mentally and evaluate not just the words being said, but how the whole environment feels and exactly how the other party is behaving. So what exactly are we keeping our radar up for? Watch for those environmental shifts. Is the room suddenly like an icebox, or is the sun glaring directly into your eyes? Keep a close eye out for those good cop, bad cop routines we mentioned. But you really want to pay special attention to false authority. We've all probably experienced this at a car dealership, right? You spend hours hammering out the absolute perfect price with the salesperson, you agree to all the terms, and then suddenly, oh, I just have to go run this by my manager. It's a classic trap designed to squeeze just a few more concessions out of you at the finish line. Keep your radar highly tuned to spot these specific, deceptive behaviors.
Let's move to and see how this builds into step 2, label the behavior. Once your radar has gone off and you've spotted the trap, this is where you diplomatically call out the tactic you've just witnessed. Now, really notice the word diplomatically. We aren't flipping the table, we aren't pointing fingers, and we definitely aren't accusing them of being liars. We are simply calmly dragging that hidden trick out into the open light.
I really want to emphasize this exact phrasing from the source because it is incredibly effective. It seems like the terms are changing. Look at how brilliantly this works. It doesn't say, "You are tricking me." It uses the highly neutral phrase, "it seems like." It perfectly names the behavior, like the shifting terms of that false authority trick we just talked about, without escalating the tension into a massive emotional argument. It essentially puts the other side on notice. It says, "I see exactly what you're doing, the trick has failed, but I am remaining perfectly professional."
But once you've diffused the trick by labeling it, you can't just leave a vacuum in the room. You have to take control of the direction of the conversation. And that leads us to the final and arguably most crucial step of the defense, Step 3, re-anchor standards. You must immediately insist on shifting the conversation far away from the manipulation and back onto solid ground. You are essentially resetting the rules of engagement, but this time it's entirely on your terms.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that the ultimate antidote to subjective, emotional, dirty tricks is right here: objective criteria. This means bringing the negotiation back to a fair standard using totally clean facts. We are talking about concrete market data, established industry precedents, or universally fair rules. You're basically telling the other side, look, we aren't going to play games with the temperature of the room or good cop, bad cop routines. We are going to base this deal on actual market data. It is undeniable, and it completely strips the manipulator of their unfair advantage.
Before we wrap up, I really want to brand this number into your memory. 3. There are exactly 3 simple steps to this framework. The next time you find yourself freezing in some corner office or dealing with a sudden manager who needs to approve a deal you already shook on, just remember the number 3. 1. Detect the trick. 2. Label the behavior calmly. 3. Re-anchor to objective criteria. It is a highly focused, snappy mental checklist that you can pull up the second you feel that psychological warfare beginning. And that brings us to the end of our explainer. I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. In your next high-stakes negotiation, are you going to silently endure the trick, or will you take control with the 3-step defense? You now know exactly what these dirty tricks look like. You know the underlying mechanics of the psychological warfare being used against you. And much more importantly, you have the exact toolkit to detect it, call it out, and completely neutralize it. The days of suffering politely are over. It's time to establish your conversational boundaries and negotiate on a foundation of fair, objective facts. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I absolutely can't wait to guide you through our next explainer.